You are live. We are live. I'd like to welcome everyone back to our final session. This is our third go around at the Alumni Step Workshop at Avenues. Tonight's guest is Patrick Flynn. Pat is an advocate and a lobbyist with experience in Harrisburg and DC, combating stigma for substance use disorder and its recovery. We're going to come back in 30 seconds. Give you guys a chance to settle in and share this with any of your friends you think would be interested. We'll see you in 30. Pat, stay right there.
I'll be right here.
Don't move. Stay present and calm. I know you could get really nervous.
Yeah.
I'll see you in 30. We're back. Welcome. So guys, as we settle in, we had another long journey through the steps. Before we get started, just a couple things on our deck to always announce. Stop by if you haven't, and if you have, thank you. Check out Hammock Readings. They're on Facebook and YouTube. Facebook, they go up every morning, 7 a.m. If you want them directly emailed to you, stop by avenuesrecovery.com. and go to the tab Hammock Readings. We can email them to you every morning. These videos are a great way to start your day or reset it with an intention, with some ideas and thoughts based in recovery, or a pause to reset, get out of that autopilot that the day could create. And remember, we're trying to live by higher principles now, and a way to recover from substance use disorder and just being lost in our thoughts. So check out Hammock Readings. If any of you are experiencing an emergency tonight, please call 911 for immediate help. If you think we can help you in any way tonight, feel free to call our 800 number, reach out to your alumni coordinators, and we'll be on it. Let's review what we've done the last 8 weeks. We've had the guests, and we've discussed their approach, their personal approach to each step, and some historical context, be it through 12-step programs or other ones from Dharma, AA, NA. And we've talked about these ideas. Step one being that we've been beaten into a submission or coerced or just cornered in life, and need to recognize that we have substance use disorder. It's a fatal and progressive illness that we are now powerless over, or hopeless is another term you hear thrown around a lot. And all that's really doing is suggesting you can't solve this by yourself. And if you could, do you have enough time to find out? Step two is now proposing maybe we're a little bit insane to this idea that we could do it by ourselves, because we now need to confront the sober mind. They're not claiming insanity happens when we're drunk or high. It's why can't I maintain sobriety? What is it about me consciously needing relief through drugs and alcohol? So we're challenging this idea. Can I do this the way someone else has, by joining a recovery community? Third step is taking an oath in the form of a prayer or commitment to a fellowship, a home group, and a sponsor. Am I going to be part of a 12-step program? Well, that means I'm going to go all the way. Now I'm taking step 4 to 12 and put my foot on the pedal. That's what that unpacks as. That's the procedural thing you're doing. And one of two things could happen. If you work step 3 long enough, we see you could seem to be on a course to relapse. To complete step 3, you have to start step 4. And that's writing an inventory. This isn't a new idea. Kind of Socratic life, the unexamined life is not worth living. Well, we have a script in 12-step programs of how to write these. In NA, there's a workbook. There's plenty of handouts that are offered, from Russell Brand's to AA in Hazleton. How do I write these resentments? What do they mean? And let's put them under a microscope. Let's look at the problems through our relationships, our fears, real or imagined, and confront this. We could write one at a time. We could write them all down. Depending on who our guide is, our sponsor, we're going to have a sense of trust and just try to follow that way. Step 5 is now we have a script for a discussion. And we don't think it works just by saying it's admitting this to yourself. You need to connect with another person. The act is so humbling. It really leaves no room, if you do it well, for your ego to breathe and believe these lies again. You're confronting the real problem. We're in pain and we want to overcome it. Step 6 is an introduction to meditation. We take an hour, we reflect. What are these 5 steps? What are my new ideals moving forward? Does my past dictate who I'm always going to be? No, we're getting guts. We're getting courage. Step 7, we conclude it with an intention. This is the truth about me. Moving forward, I'm going to be free to be who I want to be. The pain can end from the past. We may have new problems, but we want a mastery over these steps. They're just not a one and done. You can't complete them. You got to practice them. Step 8, most of it seems to be done. When we take a look at our inventory, it gives us another chance to check, is there anyone missing? I could start to make a ground plan now. It's like a staging area to what are the hard amends? What are the financial ones? Which ones can I do now? Which ones are going to have to wait? Which ones do I need help for? We saw there's 3 ideas we want to keep in mind for step 9. We get consent if it involves other people. We tell someone else our plan. We don't shoot from the hip just yet. We tell someone our idea for an amends to pass the litmus test of being selfish or not. And we maybe practice now meditation and prayer before we go off and tackle an amends. Step 10 is kind of just taking these first 9 steps and making them a way of life daily. Like almost a metacognition of resentment. Is this my fault? Can I solve it? It's not going away. Anxiety's coming back. Depression. Maybe I need to write it down again. Step 11 gives us a chance to just not have our own arrogance as our religion. We have to grow in some kind of spiritual journey. Some that unpacks as yoga, formal meditation, reading, joining other outside organizations, but finding a ritual daily. And AA gives 2 suggestions for day and night to attempt to live a life of intention and keep ourselves under a microscope. No better term. Tonight we're talking about step 12. And we say no free lunch in our workshop because it's hard to keep what was so freely given to us. It's hard to get better and just leave. I've done it, and it's painful, and you're missing the entire loop around of what makes us a community. You can't keep what you're not giving away. There's the paradox in this charity and 12-step programs. We get better by helping others, by thinking about others. So tonight, our guest, Pat, I've known Pat for a while. I remember struggles and people really concerned about him and him getting sober. And I had a hard time a couple years ago, and I was struggling to get back. Running into Pat was always kind of a stabilizing effect because he was unjudgmental. He was kind. He knew I was struggling. And he treated me like an adult with kindness and consideration. The way I see him practice his principles and all his fairs is admirable, and it's inspiring. Pat professionally has been an advocate and a lobbyist to combat stigma in workplaces, at home, in the understanding of what addiction is and how many paths to recovery there are for individuals. I'm very excited to have him, and here's Pat. Pat, it's all you.
Well, thank you, Joe. Really appreciate you asking me to come on here, talk about step 12, which is so important. I think we go through this entire journey of a lot of really, really heavy stuff throughout the steps, right? Nothing heavier than step 1 when we had to make that decision. And, then doing the work to put in to not go back to that way of life. And then we get to step 12 and having this spiritual awakening and going through the steps, I was always like really excited about like what that spiritual awakening was going to be, like some like actual like present thing that was going to happen to me. Like I was going to be like lifted up into the air and start like flying around in this spiritual fourth dimension, just like loving life, but like starting to do the work throughout the other steps to like get to a point in my life where like when I got here, it was part of me, right? The obsession had been lifted from me, and I was at a point where I didn't just feel the need to, I wanted to help others get to the place I was at, because, you know, me and Joe and I come from a tight-knit community where people know exactly what you're doing. They know exactly where you're at in life. And so a lot of people knew where I was, right? So when I got to this point, being able to help others, it was a real thing in our community because people had known where I had come from, right? So like going through this and dealing with all the principles that come up in step 12, you know, the principles of, you know, just honesty, having some hope. Having hope was like something that I couldn't believe I could ever have. Having a belief in a higher power was something I never believed. I remember the first time I finally believed that I would take a chance to have faith in a power greater than myself. I was sitting in a meeting in Philadelphia, and this guy was speaking, and he said something so standard but so profound to me. I was like, you know what? I'm going to try this out. He said, if you just have faith in a power greater than yourself and have that faith, and like, you know, like you're always nervous you're going to get duped and it's not going to be real, but like if you die and it wasn't real, you're dead anyway. So you might as well just like try to find a way to like have some faith and see that metastasize and build up inside of you. And like that was literally my journey to like faith and like a higher power for me, was to be like, yeah, like if I'm duped, I'm dead anyway, whatever. So then like you get here and you have the humility and the willingness to help other people and to live this way through good times and bad. And I think that's an important part of step 12, right? To be able to live a life of recovery through good times and bad, right? You know, recovery hasn't always been easy for me. When I had just celebrated 2 years, two of my best friends both died in back-to-back weeks. And I was pallbearer in 2 funerals on back-to-back Saturdays, right? 2 kids that I grew up with my entire life, 2 of my best friends. And like being able to live this life through step 12 in recovery through some of the darkest times that I never believed I could ever live through, let alone in recovery, not using drugs or alcohol. It was such an important stepping stone for me to further my recovery, right? To be able to go through terrible situations and come out the other side, to be able to go through uncomfortable situations and find growth inside of myself. I always love to say that like we cannot grow in stagnation. We need to find ourselves in uncomfortable situations in order to grow. And that was a big part of step 12 for me as well. Just like that awakening that like I have done so much to change my life, right? Like the obsession to drink and to drug has been lifted from me. How do I help others by the way I'm living? Not how do I like go up to my friend who's in a really bad spot, going off the rails, and say, come be like me. Come and do what I'm doing, right? But instead of that, to live a life where that person finds that attractive. And they look at me and they say, wow, look at what Flynn was able to do. Like maybe one day I could get there. That is powerful beyond measure. Even if that helps one person. I've seen it help quite a few people in my 7.5 years in recovery. There's been a lot of people out there that I've been able to help just through living the principles of this program and being a stand-up person who was being honest, something I could never be. I could never be honest with other people. I would lie just to lie, right? But also I couldn't be honest with myself about anything. So just like being honest with people, having that integrity, internal integrity, and like bringing that out into the world, finding it inside of me first and foremost, and bringing that out into the world was such an important part of me being able to help other people. And you know, like they say, like in step 12, you need to practice this in all your affairs. And that's something that, of course, everyone who's working a 12-step program or any other path to recovery falls short on, right? We're human beings, but to take the best faith effort to just live a life, a humble, recovery-driven life in everything I do. If I try to do that on a daily basis, I'm doing well, right? And to try to help others when they need to, and to try to be of service to others, and talk to people every single day. You know, I might not make a meeting every day, but there's not a day that goes by that I'm not talking to another person in recovery. There's not a single day that doesn't go by. And that doesn't mean that I'm necessarily talking to them about recovery specific things, right? But I am talking to people in recovery. You know, when I was living in Philadelphia, there was a core of 4 guys, right? And one of them now lives in California, another one in Allentown, another one in Philadelphia. 2 of the 3 other guys I had never met before I came to recovery. Now they're 2 of my greatest friends in the world. I was in both of their weddings. People I had never met before I came to this program, but talking to them on a daily basis, doing things with them, being of service to them whenever they need it, whether that be, you know, help someone move something, whatever it may be, just to be of service to other people, to get outside of my selfish, self-centered self, which is like the place I love to stay, and I do stay there a lot. And I'll be honest with you, my girlfriend's over in the next room, and she's probably listening to me and being like, "What are you talking about? Are you crazy right now?" But it's something that we have to strive to do on a daily basis. And you know, I put myself in a lot of uncomfortable positions. For example, like this past year, I ran for elected office, right? And part of step 12 for me is to remain the same way, whether what you're going through is a success or a defeat, right? And to always keep that same even keel, regardless of what it was. And I ran and I lost. And you know, and after that, you know, talking to other people and being completely okay with it. And I know that there were rumblings around town that like, are you nervous that Pat's going to relapse if he loses this election, or like things like that?
Man.
But like, but it's because of these steps and because of the way I live my life through step 12 that like no matter what happened that day, if I had won, it wasn't going to be an arrogant, I'm the best win. It was going to be, this is about people. This is about other people. This is about me being in a position that I put myself in through recovery to help them. And a loss is, okay, I lost. It was a great experience. Now let me find another way in which I could help those people, right? Because that's what it comes back to, is me helping other people. My old career where I worked, I found that there was no real support group for anyone dealing with addiction in any form, whether that be a family member, someone who lost a loved one, a person in recovery, a person struggling, in this big impenetrable corporate workforce where stigma is very, very real. And I broke through that red tape and started a group there to break down the stigma of addiction in a corporate workplace, which is the first of its kind in the country. And that's not because I wanted the accolades to be that person who did it. It was because I knew that there were people there hurting and struggling that needed help, whatever that may have been. And this wasn't like in lieu of an EAP or like actual treatment or something, but just like an open spot where we could talk about what's going on with us, right? And like that's step 12 there, right? That's helping other people to potentially get to the spot where you're at. And that's something it just remains so important to me. And, you know, I really think that everything that leads us up to step 12 is so utterly important. But once you get there, it is so vitally important to give it back, right? It's not, it's a continuing circle. You have to continue doing it all, right? But to give back to others is so important. It would be so unbelievably selfish, I believe, to get all these great things. And for me, a 12-step program, but to get all these great things and see all these people that went out of their way to help me get to that place, and then be like, thanks.
Yeah.
See ya. You know, and that doesn't mean life doesn't happen. That doesn't mean I should go to more meetings. I should do more things, right? But I still do them, and it isn't necessarily always in a meeting or in a 12-step fellowship, but it's happening in parts of my life on a daily basis, right? And I don't know if that's like the purest way of doing it, but I'm okay with that, because I know that, you know, let's be real. There's also people who are sitting in a 12-step meeting acting this way and going out and living lives of complete dereliction in every other affair in their life, right? And they're staying clean and sober. And that's okay. That's for them, and that's okay. But what I'm saying is, just because I'm not necessarily doing it on a daily basis in a 12-step room doesn't mean I'm not doing it on a daily basis. And that, to me, is the most important thing, to get people, to help people onto the path, to get them to where they want to be. And they might not want to be where I wanted to be, where I wanted to go. You know, we have different dreams and visions and beliefs, and like what we want out of this life and what we want out of this world. But like, to help get somebody onto that path is amazing. And then, you know, my old home group in Philly was just so cool to see, right? Like, that guy that walked in that first day broken and beaten, and I, you know, offered him a cigarette and a talk after the meeting, and exchange phone numbers, and talk to them, and have them call you at 1 a.m. because they're struggling. And then, like, fast forward to being there when they're celebrating 3 years, right? And like seeing that transformation inside of people, and seeing that it, like, the real transformation, not surface. This isn't surface level transformation. This is real, internal, deep 180s that people go through in a fascinating way. I was a bottom of the barrel drug addict. I didn't care about anyone or anything at any point in time, ever, no matter what, unless it got me what I needed next. And to get to that place and that transformation where not only am I thinking of others, but I'm putting in the work to help them, right? It's not like a fleeting thought of like, I wonder how so-and-so is doing. It's picking up the phone and calling them and asking them how they're doing. It's being there when they call. It's answering the Facebook message. It's, you know, a friend a couple months ago I hadn't seen in years who needed to get to treatment, and going and picking them up at 11:30 at night, driving them to a treatment center, right? And being there of service to other people, because that's what people did for me, is really profound and an amazing part of this journey. And it's, I mean, I'd venture to say, like, my favorite part giving back. It's so cool, you know. Although like the other steps, a lot of them were great at the end. They were some of the most uncomfortable situations of my entire life, right? And although I knew I had to do them, and I did them, and the relief that washed over me, getting back to that, going through uncomfortable situations, were great. At the time, they sucked for me. But this, the whole time, step 12 has just been, you know, it's continuous to me, and it's been the greatest journey I've ever been on. There's been a lot of great things that have happened in my life, but since I came into recovery, but this changed everything for me, and it's so amazing. And I don't know if I went long enough, or if there's anything else, Joe, that you want me to touch on, but I'd love to get some questions.
Well, I wanted to take the next 12 minutes and just silently just absorb what you said. Let's take a moment.
Yeah, let's do that.
Dead air. Pat, I've known you a while, and that was the first time I heard you get offered Pascal's wager. at a meeting. And it's funny because that's what it seems like to an addict. You really kind of encapsulated that. I'm not willing to take a risk because I'm going to be duped, but I'm dying of my addiction. I'm in excruciating emotional pain. My life is in collapse. I can't solve the basic problems an adult can, like paying a bill on time. Like my mind's crumbling, and I'm afraid someone's going to dupe me at step 3. Like, what are you trying to get me to delude myself in? And all of us have to take that risk. And that day, it seems like that opens it up to getting on a highway towards step 12, getting through the steps. I also liked unpacking the idea of service, connection, and fellowship. Part of the step starts before you're even at 12. Do you have a license? Can you drive other people to meetings? Do you have a phone? Can you answer it for a stranger when it's uncomfortable? And here's some of the best help you can offer. Listening to people, like you were saying. That was really hard for me. I'm an anxious guy. I talk a lot. It's hard. It was really hard because I was in such panic this last year getting sober. That was the beginning of me connecting to AA again, is listening to people in the meetings. If I didn't share at a meeting, can I try to listen to every single person? And this was this was going towards the direction of what we're talking about, an awakening. So this was under the premise that we were asleep. And that's what you were describing addiction as, we are asleep. We're on the next need, the next task to fulfill a desire or quell. Like that's the personality that rises out of someone who has addiction, trauma. We're just on a constant task to soothe ourselves, regardless of what bad behavior is involved in this. Right. You can't get out of it. It's autopilot. So now we're awake from this, and we could see it in others, and we don't have to judge it. It's not a threat to us, other people's bad behavior. I know they're hurting. People act this way when they're in a lot of pain. That's kind of the empathy that rises. Guys, if you have questions, let's start lining them up. And I have a question came in while you're speaking distinctly, and I'd love for you to answer it. You did do something that's unique to recovery. You're in the public arena. You ran a public race, and you did it with dignity, class, and the principles of these steps, and you lost publicly, and you're still Pat Flynn. You know, knowing politics, you could win and not win as yourself, but you could lose, and you could lose as Pat Flynn, and you're still, you know, a man of principle. I'm just in such admiration of watching the entire process. It really inspired me. A question came in while you're saying that. What about triggers being around you? How would you answer that? What could that mean? How do you deal with that, being so public and being active socially and in recovery?
I think it starts with being open and honest about it. What is it that actually triggers me? How do I make sure I'm not around them, right? Like I'm a firm believer in this, that like, you know, I don't want other people to have to change because of me, right? So like, if there's something that triggers me, I don't want to be around that, but I also don't want to say to like someone like, you can't do this because I ruined my life for a decade. And now like, I don't think it's fair that you have a glass of wine in front of me. That's something that I would never do. But I think like there's a lot of other, like outside of the, like, you know, drugs and alcohol around you triggering, or like the thought, like there was some stuff throughout that process that was, you know, tough to deal with. You know, when you're a guy who's trying to live a life of recovery in all your affairs, and then you hop into the political realm, you're dealing with some unsavory characters. You're dealing with some people that are just lying to lie, telling you one thing just to tell you, like all of those things. And they could end up being triggering things when you look back at them, right? Especially in hindsight, after losing a race, you think about some of the things people said to you, and then you're looking at the results and you're like, I don't know about that. But I think for me, it's talking about that. It's putting it out there. It's talking about how it made me feel to other people that care, right? And not holding it in and like building a grudge and like like angrily, like thinking about it deep into the night. It's like getting it off my shoulders, getting it off my chest, saying how these things make me feel, and trying to move on from them, like close the door on them. And like some of them, like in this specific scenario, may end up being a conversation with people. Other ones may be, someone I'll never talk to again. Who knows? But like being okay with that, right? So like, those things could be very triggering to people, and like and take the politics out of it, and just in any scenario, right? When you're just like living life, scenarios like this pop up. But when it's not like the in your face drugs and alcohol, it's more the subtle things that are like you're dealing with. I think for me, it has always been very beneficial for me to openly and honestly talk about them, say exactly how they make me feel, get the feedback, try to, to the best of my ability, listen and react to the feedback, and like, and just try to live that way, as opposed to keeping it to myself and saying like, I got this, because I tried that many times and never really worked out too well.
That's the second half of the step. And I think you really nailed that. Practicing these principles in all our affairs. And there's principles to the steps. And some people would say it's a synonym for the steps. But in AA legacies, you see principles attached to each idea of these steps. And you to practice those, what is, humility? Humility is that, addiction through trauma, depression, anxiety, all these coupling things that we're used to in our mind alone don't need a private life anymore. And the humility is I can share this with other people because you know what? I'm not a freak. And it feels that way if I keep those things. What you were discussing alone, I feel like a freak if I'm a week with my own thoughts like that. Can't tell anyone this. Let me solve the problem first, then I'll tell someone.
Right.
That's when I'm going to get in trouble. I get in trouble for sure. And to watch you do that in your profession and see it that other people could do it in all kinds of professions is that we have a community, and community is connection. I don't have that when I'm drinking. I gave up on connection. I have the shallow connection. I'm safe because I'm around a bunch of other drunks, but I have no real intimacy and connection. What I'm really yearning for, because I'm taken out of life. It takes me out. The first half, let's explore that a little bit. The idea of being awake. You said it. You've seen it in others. This profound, fundamental transformation. We're not talking about hitting the gym, getting a tan, whitening your teeth, and now you've entered the fast track of recovery. Recovery is not about almost getting away from consequences. I think for the lay person observing recovery, that looks like the success. And of course it is. This is the low-bearing fruit. I become employable again. I could get out of a legal system. I might have a dialogue with family that have been, out of my life or harmed. What happens fundamentally, being awake, I don't think we really touch on it too much. It's in the appendix of a couple of the programs. And there's kind of a secular definition to it. It's a personality change so profound, you overcome addiction, the ritual, the obsession, the knee-jerk reaction to go find comfort in your drug of choice. But that also means something really distinctly. We can be present in our conscious life. For most of my life, that was intolerable for me. I had to retreat, even if I wasn't drunk, I had to retreat into some fantasy, like where I could always have a space in my head where I was where reality didn't matter. Problems. What does that look like for you to feel presence, be able to be alone when someone's talking? You could realize, you could feel anxiety raising up or some kind of character defect, and you could confront it in real time. How do you unpack that for someone that doesn't believe that could happen for them?
Geez, I had a feeling you go real heavy on me, Joe.
Always, baby. We don't have shallow conversations, Pat.
I'm aware. Yeah, I think at the baseline, it's that safe in your own skin, right? Just like finally getting to that point where, like, okay, I could just like be present wherever I am, whether that be alone in my bed or in a room of 100 strangers or in a room with my family or in a room with people I don't really like, I could be me. I could be safe in my skin. And like that's something that was one of the bigger impossibilities for me. I always had to be someone else.
Yeah.
Depending upon the situation I was in. If I was by myself, I was like, you know, the King of Scotland. If I was with, you know, it depended upon the situation, but it's all about the journey getting to that point. And I think it happens like slowly over time when you're like, just like doing the next right thing. Right. And like being in the next right, doing the next right thing in the next like tough situation. I always come back to like the baseline of everything that like happened for me in recovery is finally putting myself in those uncomfortable situations. I know I said it a few times, but like my entire life was based on if a situation is uncomfortable, I run as fast as I possibly can. I get out of it as fast as I possibly can. If I think that a situation may potentially become uncomfortable a week down the road, I will sabotage it now. So then at least I could have like, I could hold dominion over like why that happened. Right. And like, so like finally like going through those situations gave me the relief and the belief that I could be who I am anywhere. But it took a long time for me to get to that place. It took a really long time and a lot of hard work and a lot of trial and error. But I really believe for me, it's like, it had to be for me, the way I am, there had to be some sort of like internal shift in me coupled with like tangible results. I needed tangible results as like how like the things I was doing like were starting to positively impact my life, right? Like I couldn't believe anyone. I'm not taking your word for it. I needed to see those things start happening in my life. And that I believe for me that was in tandem with with the stuff internally starting my mindset and my outlook on life really starting to change.
Pat, I understood that completely. I mean, that was hard for me. I had a semi-public life, shamelessly promoting myself most of my life. Got used to it. You go on autopilot, but to watch you do public life, because there's two senses of self. Like if we're going to be, just basic about it psychologically, you got the public self, the persona, and the 12-step life addresses this. We feel this is a double life. People who have addiction, it's always in conflict privately in my head. I'm a fraud. If they really knew me, you can't get too close to me. You'll eventually find out who I am. I'm a drug addict. I'm simple to unpack if you really figure me out. I saw you address that and you stay authentic. Like your version of practicing these principles, you were able to maintain that. And it was inspiring to me and helpful to me. And the way you addressed that and being present. You got a sense of recovery over a time of connecting with other people, reading, exploring spiritual ideas you may have passed by in the past. What can they mean? To now be present, when you're not yourself. That's inspiring. That's step 12. So let's tackle the first half, maybe before we start to wind down and take a few more questions. Carrying this message to other people, that recovery works, is in the form of the steps, that they've worked for you, and you do it sometimes outside of 12-step life, helping other people into their own individual path. What we didn't address is this is the fail-safe for long-term sobriety. When you meet grief, which I had, you have experienced, depression, anxiety, financial insecurity, maybe a sense of dread and uncertainty about the future, especially all of us can relate to that in the last 2 or 3 years. All this happening, I can still, what 12-step life says, we can get out of this, regardless of that problem, if we go and help someone else. How is that in the last years and these trials? How has that worked for you? How has that become a tool when life's overwhelming with some problems, something's not working out? Where do you make the pivot? Maybe I should pay attention to another alcoholic or an addict.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating premise, right? Like, my life is in shambles, go help someone else.
Yeah.
Um,
Take my advice. I'm not using it.
yeah. So, but it's real. It is, and like it's sometimes hard to explain, but it's very real. Like, to get outside of yourself. Uh, Thanks, great, Captain. We're sinking shirt. I saw that on the bottom. But to be able to get outside of yourself, like in those moments, is such a powerful thing. It's so it emboldens you to do more and more. Like there's something going on in my life, and all I want to do, because all I had ever done for years and years and years, was sit in it. Because I want to sit in my shit, and I want people to sit there and feel bad for me and all that thing, regardless of what the situation is. But like, instead, like, I'm going to go out and I'm going to help someone else, and I'm going to be of service to other people when like, you know, which is the total antithesis of everything that I've always wanted to do and everything that I always have done, right? It was, please everyone, do this for me. Don't you know what happened to me? Or like, whatever the situation may be, but like to put yourself in a position to turn that around and like be there for others and help someone else get through a situation they're going through, and like, and just get by giving back, right? That's what it comes down to, right? Like your life in some capacity or some way, I don't know what it is, you might be hurting, right? And it doesn't matter if I'm going through situation A and you're going through situation B, we're both hurting, right? Yeah. But in order for me to start healing from that, like, it makes it that much easier for me if I'm out there helping someone else. And that's something that I truly love doing at this point in time. You know, I love being able to get outside of myself, especially in those times where I really don't want to, and just be of service to another person. Like I've said numerous times, that may be in a 12-step meeting and someone going through something like that in there, and maybe somewhere else too. And that's okay. And it doesn't matter, is I'm getting outside of myself and helping someone else.
Yeah, it's amazing. What would seem anywhere else hypocrisy and bizarre is the spiritual truth in AA. Unless someone's, you know, I think we could all see like a typhoid Mary, some like in 12-step life, that's getting everyone else sick, but somehow keeps showing up. But the idea of me being in pain or anxiety or stressed about, especially something I'm desire, more improvements in my life. And, you know, as an alcoholic and an addict and someone who seeks indulgence for relief from a problem that's really of the spirit, existential. And when I get back to listening to a guy who just got out of prison, hasn't seen his kids in 2 years, and we're driving to a meeting together, there's a stoicism in that I'm like, man, thank your lucky stars. You got a second chance at life. There's that idea. Then there's the idea that it's hard to be a hypocrite if you're doing, like, say, one-on-one step work, or you're meeting a guy and you're helping him understand what the steps are. It's hard to feed him BS. He's going to see it. Alcoholics, even sick and addicts, know bullshit a mile away. They're seeing it everywhere, regardless. But it's hard.
Both sick and going through it probably more than most, because they've just been doing it for quite a long time before they came.
And it's hard to accept insincere help. It brings an authenticity back out of me. Like, this is my baseline. This is waiting for me if I fall back asleep. And I fell asleep before. So it's something I maintain. It's not something I achieved. Like, and the way I hear you describe recovery, you're maintaining a life, a conscious life that you want. So, I mean, to hear about the suffering that you experience, like any addiction, and this may or may not be our fault, but somewhere in that spiritual awakening, it becomes our responsibility. And that's kind of the awakening. I could be responsible. It doesn't matter who's to blame for all this pain, hurt, addiction rise out, or whatever the scenario is for someone. Your sense of power now comes from a responsibility that you feel over your own mind in the course of your life. Let's see if we have any more questions. There's Patrick McDonough. Thanks, Pat. Sabotage now. Is that some kind of hidden agenda? Is that an MK Ultra? Is that a sign to trigger you into a?
Maybe you meant Serenity now. I don't know. I don't know what Patrick M meant by that. I'd love for him to potentially
comb through a couple of the comments here, guys, and look for some questions. We still have a little time left in that sense. So we got through step 12 and this idea, having had the spiritual awakening, this comes, by taking a risk. It's not what we believe. It's maybe what we can trust, the process. It's not asking us to subscribe to a belief, but having had this awakening, we're now of a conscious mind, a personality change that makes us feel a little safe, not even a cockiness. It's saying, it almost describes it in the book as a neutrality. Sanity has returned. So drinking and drugs, we're not even considering as the problem. They're this failed solution to a prior condition, a spiritual malady, an illness. This is the practice of the steps. So we're awake. We're going to share this same message to other people, that this works. Doing these principles works. And we're going to keep practice them in all our affairs. Guys, is there any questions that you'd want? And if there's questions that you're not comfortable maybe even asking in this forum, you could always email me at joe.vanwee@avenuesrecovery.com. I'll put that on the screen for you. I get back to you within a week. Any steps, support, or materials you're looking for, 4th step guides, send me an email. I'll get back to you within the week. If it's an emergency, please call us. And if it's a serious emergency tonight, always dial 911.
Let me just say thank you, Joe. This has been I've been following along with these, and really great. It's a number one, great ambiance you have up there in the studio, but really powerful stuff that you're doing here to help people, all across the country, I'm sure worldwide, get a better understanding of what the step work in practice is, and people's personal experiences with it. And it's awesome. It's important. And it's, part of how we do my favorite thing of breaking the stigma around addiction. So I just want to thank you and Avenues for doing this.
Well, I'm flattered. And the lion's share of this credit is it's Avenues. I never worked in a treatment center before. And, the trend is a lot of are changing from the holistic ideas and principles of the 12 steps to different approaches. And I have no judgment over those, but I relate to the existential threat of that comes for most addicts and alcoholics that I understand, and a way to approach them through the steps, especially me. I had trouble. I'm very secular. I'd rather die on my feet than live on my knees in some diluted manner. How are the steps going to work? And they worked, again, because I found alcoholics in my type in these communities. We're all can agree on one thing. We want you to stop being in pain. And Avenues gave us a great platform and a wonderful clinical setting up there that I'm really proud to be a part of. So I always thank them. And I want to give one shout out. He's not with us tonight. Recovery Mike couldn't make it tonight. We are going to be taking a break over the next couple weeks. And Mike's going to pop up some special events that will, so stay tuned, keep checking Facebook, that will rise up this summer. And we're playing with some ideas of a night, maybe recovery and grief, dating and recovery, some guiding principles. People get to share their experiences of some pitfalls and things that help them. We'll be discussing some interesting topics. If you guys have any ideas, please drop us a line on Facebook or any social media. We are responsive. It's a collaborative effort. We'll be picking the steps back up at the end of August, going in September. We'll do another 8-week workshop at the end of the summer. We want to start strong and represent New Orleans, our 3 facilities out there in our enormous community that's been getting a lot of attention for how strong their community is and vocal in combating the opioid crisis there and doing it in a dignified, loving, meaningful way to help all people. Live with dignity, with life-saving medications, and find a form of recovery that could produce, long-term stability. So we want to thank New Orleans, and we can't wait to start after the summer with some of the wonderful people that are outside of the Avenues family, but are part of our community that we'll be sharing in August. So please check back in then. I'm always a fan of smoke them if you got them. And we're winding down. Pat, anything you'd like to say? Oh, yeah, you got the vape. Guys, I really appreciate everyone coming out tonight. And if you want to get in touch with either one of us, please reach out through the email. Pat, any closing thoughts or ideas you'd like to address?
No, not really. Just thank you again for having me. And if you ever need to get in touch with me, go through Joe's email. We'll set up a time. I'd love to talk to you if you'd like to about really anything you want to talk about. I'm always here. And that's step 12.
Step 12. Roger that. Coming in step 12, coming in hot. All right. Thanks, guys. And I look forward to seeing you at the end of the summer. Keep an eye out. Recovery Mike will be doing some neat events live in the next couple of weeks. Stay well, stay safe, stay calm, and sober. We'll see you guys soon.
See ya.